Hey guys, happy Christmas tide and a huge welcome to the Holy Shed. Hope you've been having fun. Though, yeah, of course, I know that Christmas ain't fun for everyone. And I send out love, especially to those of you who are missing loved ones at this time. And I'm thinking particularly about Tracy today, who is a long-time friend and Shedster, who is going to be at her mum's funeral tomorrow. So, all the best, Tracy. Me, I've been working today. Oh, yeah, got up early to be ready for Pause for Thought on the Good Morning Sunday show on Radio 2, and then off to preach my last sermon, the last sermon of 2024. And by the way, if you want to listen to my Pause for Thought, the link is now up on my Facebook page, and hopefully there'll soon be a link for the sermon too, should you be interested. But basically, what I want to do now is expand upon what I said in the sermon, which was all about Mary of Nazareth, the mother of Jesus. And I really do think there's something about Mary. I also reckon that she's badly misrepresented. I mean, at one end of the extreme, Catholics, some of them, exalt Mary almost to the point of deification. And maybe in reaction to that, Protestants, evangelicals in particular, tend to attach precious little real significance to Mary. I mean, she's an important but basically bit part player in the really important story, which is about Jesus. And so, yeah, I mean, she's honoured because she tends to be the obedient young girl who said yes to the angel, but not a lot else really. But look, I think she's being sold short from both of these directions. So I say, forget the deification thing, and also forget the obedient empty vessel stuff too. There's much more to Mary than all of this. To me, she is an amazing human being in her own right, and I want to tell you why. The Christian faith that I grew up with was fiercely anti-Catholic. Images and icons of Mary were all deemed to be idolatrous, definitely have nothing to do with all of that. I remember when I used to walk to my Church of England school, my junior school, I had to pass a Catholic church, which had this huge Mary a Mary statue outside. And I'm not even joking. I would literally cross the road to pass by on the other side. Such was my inbred reaction to Catholicism. Nobody actually told me to do that, but the kind of antipathy toward Catholicism was so inbred that was what I did. And phrases like Our Lady and Mother of God, completely repugnant, heresy. In my evangelical upbringing, we believed doggedly in the virgin birth in such a way that reduced Mary, I think, to this compliant instrument of God's purpose and not a lot else. Her virtue, as I say, being this acquiescent obedience. Her body was this pure receptacle for divine impregnation. And other than this, as I say, she was a bit part player in a story in which she occasionally popped up here or there. And it's amazing how adamant we can be about the doctrine of, the virgin birth, and yet really pay little attention to the person that we're concerned with in that. So look, I'm not going to dive right into that virgin birth thing just now. I mean, I'll cover it if you wish me to. You can just ask. But sufficient to say that I see no reason whatsoever why the notion of incarnation, God becoming fully manifest in human form, requires a miraculous virgin birth. In fact, quite the reverse, I would say. If incarnation means anything real, if it means that God appeared in genuine human form, then I think it requires a genuine human being. Otherwise, Jesus wasn't a proper human being, more of a god, a god in a man's suit, as Walter Wink puts it. I like what he says. He says, what we seek, he's saying, in contrast to that, is a Jesus who is not the omnipotent God in a man's suit, but someone like us, who looked for God at the center of his life and called the world to join him, a proper human being who teaches us how to be fully human. But back to Mary, because whatever our theology of the virgin birth, we need to remember that Jesus was Mary's boy. He was Mary's child. She carried him in her womb. She struggled and screamed him into the world, as all mothers do. She suckled him at her breasts. She cuddled and comforted him when he was upset. And by the way, don't for a moment believe all that no crying he made, Tosh. Of course he cried and filled his nappy with doodah, but that's another matter. Mary helped him take his first stumbling steps, bandaged his knee when he fell over, taught him love and kindness, taught him how to be human in the fullest and best sense that she knew. Last year, St. Mary's Cathedral in Linz in Austria displayed a sculpture by the Austrian artist Esther Strauss. I know, it's a bit shocking, isn't it? It's called Crowning, it portrays Mary giving birth to Jesus. And I don't know about you, I had an initial reaction when I saw this picture, but then I looked again and thought, wow. But you don't need to be too religious savvy to realise that it provoked enormous controversy among Catholics. Actually, some anonymous person, believe it or not, decapitated Mary shortly after the statue was installed. It's called crowning because it portrays the crown of his head appearing from Mary's vulva. I mean, I've spared her modesty at the moment by not showing you the shot from that angle, but you can find it on the internet if you want. It's all there. Jesus pushing his way, or Mary pushing him out into the world. It's an amazing thing, in response to all that sort of reaction and decapitating and everything, the artist responded and said this: the intolerance, backwardness, and lack of enlightenment in the Catholic Church is frightening. Well, I don't think it's just in the Catholic Church, actually. But she went on to say that most portraits of the Virgin Mary were made by men. Of course they were, and have therefore often served patriarchal interests. And she added that Mary, in her artwork, gets her body back. She's an embodied woman. And I agree with that, What I like about this image is that it portrays Mary not as some semi-ethereal, romanticized figure, in soft clothing, under soft lighting, but as a real woman doing what many women do. Heave-hoeing a child into the world, because that's what the Christmas story is about. A Catholic feminist theologian in Linz University saw the statue as, she says, a very poetic work that shows the natural birth of Jesus. Mary is shown, she says, in her vulnerability, but also in her strength. It is a strong affirmation of God's incarnation and of the female body as a vehicle of incarnation. As I say, my first reaction was a bit of a shock, and then when I looked more, I thought, yeah, I need to put this up here because I think it's a brilliant idea and a beautiful image. I reckon that what is lost in both the near deification of Mary and in her portrayal as a compliant virginal figure is her humanity, her true womanhood, which is why I love her song, which we call the Magnificat. I love it so much. It's one of the most profound of all Christian hymns, an astonishing manifesto of God's kingdom. And the woman who composed this certainly had fire in her belly and must surely have instilled some of that passion into her son's soul too. I think Kelly Lattimore, we're familiar with Kelly Lattimore, aren't we? I've used him so many times here. Um, I think that this uh, icon, which he calls Mother of God, Protectress of the Oppressed, is kind of an embodiment of the spirit of the Magnificat. And oh my goodness, I love this image so much. Clearly, it's dominated by, I imagine, the perimeter fence of, well, a refugee camp, a detention centre, whatever, with Mary holding her child, draped in a hypothermia blanket, and looking through this fence. Her beautiful eyes are fixed and focused in powerful solidarity with all who are oppressed, banished, or excluded. This image, as with the Magnificat itself, is a long, long way from Mother Mild Mary, meek and compliant. This is a woman of strength, of agency, of a right sort of independence. He has shown strength with his arm. He has scattered the proud in the imagination of their hearts. He's brought down the powerful from their thrones and lifted up the lowly. He has filled the hungry with good things and sent the rich away empty. Wow. This Mary is a fiery prophet to match any in Hebrew history, a crusader for a different and just world, a woman with assurance and assertion and agency. As the Reverend Carol Sharp of the Yale Divinity School puts it, don't envision Mary as the radiant woman peacefully composing the Magnificat. Instead, see her as a girl who sings defiantly to her God through her tears, fists clenched against an unknown future. Mary's courageous song of praise becomes a radical resource for those seeking to honour the holy amid the suffering and conflicts of real life. Wow. And you know what? Get this. In the past century, there are at least 3 instances of governments banning, banning the public recitation of the Magnificat because its words were deemed revolutionary and subversive. First one was during the British rule of India. The Magnificat was prohibited from being sung in church. That is by us guys, by the British. Yeah. Secondly, in the 1980s, Guatemala's government discovered Mary's words about God's preferential love for the poor to be too dangerous and too revolutionary. Mary's words were inspiring the Guatemalan poor to believe that change was indeed possible. And so their government banned any public recitation of Mary's words. Incredible, isn't it? These words, which are just customarily sung week in, week out in Anglican churches, banned by the British Raj in India, banned in Guatemala, and then thirdly in Argentina, after the mothers of the Plaza de Mayo, whose children all disappeared during what they call the Dirty War in Argentina. These mothers placed the Magnificat's words on posters throughout the capital plaza, and the military junta outlawed any public display of Mary's song. Amazing. I was banned from a pub once for righteous reasons, but I'll tell you about that another time. But think of this, Mary's words banned because nations, governments were threatened by them. I love Dietrich Bonhoeffer's comments as well about the Magnificat in an Advent sermon that he gave before the war, in which, of course, he was going to be executed by the Nazis for plotting against Hitler. This is what he says. He said, "The Song of Mary is the oldest Advent hymn. It is at once the most passionate, the wildest, one might even say the most revolutionary Advent hymn ever sung. This is not the gentle, tender, dreamy Mary whom we sometimes see in paintings. This song has none of the sweet, nostalgic, or even playful tones of some of our Christmas carols. It is instead a hard, strong, inexorable song about the power of God and the powerlessness of humankind. It's a great little commentary. And this image, of course, is one of Kelly Lattimore's icons as well, of Dietrich Bonhoeffer. He's got such a talent, hasn't he, for bringing things right into clear focus in our world. This is not a gentle, tender, dreamy Mary. No. This is a hard, strong, inexorable song about the power of God and the powerlessness of humankind. Mary didn't simply give birth to a child. She also gave birth to a dream, because the substance of the Magnificat is a precursor to what Jesus was all about. The vision of a different kind of world, God's kingdom made flesh and blood, a vision which Mary surely helped to kindle and bring to birth in her son. Mary's vision in the Magnificat is of an upside down world, where the powerful are brought low and the lowly are lifted up. And hey, we all wish to see a whole lot more of that on a global scale in our world at this time. But the reality is that the kingdom is breaking into the world all the time, often through the most unusual people and in the most unlikely places, which is what the Christmas story itself is all about. Last year, in the cold of January, I took the funeral of Robert, a man with no next of kin, completely alone in the world. I've taken so many funerals like that over the years, where there's just been me, and I've stood at gravesides where it's just me and the funeral director and the grave digger somewhere over there, and that's all there is. And there's something deeply sad about that kind of situation. But although Robert had no next of kin, I was completely surprised to find that there were 14 people in the crematorium chapel, and they were his carers, and they cared enough to be there. The manager of the care home gave a lovely eulogy, speaking of Robert's warmth and humour and how much they loved him. And after he'd given his little piece, I decided to leave the lectern and go down and sit amongst the congregation. And I just turned around to them all and said, "Please tell me about Robert. I don't know him. You clearly all do." And it just, stories tumbled out from one after another, lots of smiles and not a few tears as well. One lovely Afro-Caribbean lady said that she'd invited Robert around for Christmas dinner with her family for the past 5 years. I mean, heck. And people spoke Robert's name with warmth and affection, with friendship and smiles. And I just thought Magnificat. I drove home feeling that the kingdom of God had just happened in the East Chapel at Golders Green. I don't know how many, if any, of those people were religious or, church-going Christians or whatever. Doesn't matter. Magnificat is not dependent on a religious context or religious beliefs. It's something embedded in this woman of Nazareth that is also embedded in many human beings in the world today. But there at Golders Green, surrounded by lots and lots of memorials to the good and the great of our society, the lowly was lifted up. Mary's boy was in our midst. I think that this is what Christmas is about, and it happens all year round. It's called Incarnation, a word that just simply means made flesh. God made flesh in the world. Meister Eckhart, the great 13th century Christian mystic, speaks about this. He says, "What good is it to me if Mary gave birth to Christ 1400 years ago and I do not do the same?" It's a magnificent statement. But clearly he understood, yes, that Mary was the mother of God, in that she was someone who brought the God child into the world. But Eckhart realized that that was not limited to one event for him 1400 years ago, for us 2000 years ago. But, you know, we can all be mothers of God. We can all bring forth Christ in our world as it happened in that chapel at Golders Green. And that was just a reflection of what had been going on and on and on for years whilst Robert had been in their care. I think that Mary needs redeeming from ecclesiastical dogma about her body, redeeming from her exalted throne of virginal perfection in the heavens, and just seen for the woman she was, which is absolutely more than enough. A feisty woman whose compassionate, zealous soul still symbolizes a different way of being in the world, in which shame changes sides, to quote Giselle Pellicot. Or as another priest, Anne Emery in Massachusetts, reminds us. Let me put this up because it's so good. She writes in her blog, "Mary's song rings in our ears and calls us to disrupt the hold violence has on our world. She sings of a future where all children are safe from violence. She sings of a future where people have homes and food and jobs. Her words are in solidarity with us. She sees to the far horizon and sings of the coming reign of God. We will be fed and we will feed others. We will be blessed and we will bless others. We will receive justice and we will do justice to others. All things are possible with God." Which just makes me want to say, "Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee." But you know what, guys? The Lord is with us all, and we all can follow in the path of Mary, giving birth to Christ, to all that Christ represents in our world, which is very exciting. So I'm going to finish with a prayer poem from my book, which I've used before, but this is the time of year for it. It's entitled "For Mary of Nazareth." Mary of Nazareth, forgive us when we obscure your shining humanity with ecclesiastical dogma, when we mistake your fierce soul for sentimental compliance, when we domesticate your womanly passion with notions of virginal perfection. Mary, mothering heart of God, instill in us, women and men, your feisty resistance to arrogant exploitation of those without a voice, your dogged solidarity with the despised, the marginalized, and victims of abuse. May we, like you, defiantly reimagine the world as a place of empowerment, of obstinate compassion and justice. Mary, whose heart was pierced through love, help us to comprehend that hope is always born of despair, that darkness is at its darkest just before the dawn. So guys, like Mary, let us treasure all these things in our hearts, or the other translation says ponder. Pondering is a good thing. Allowing these images and thoughts to percolate through to our deeper self. So, hey, if you have a drink handy, you might like to join me. I've just got one, and I'd like to propose a toast. I'd like to propose a toast to Mother Mary, who showed us what God is like and who brought love to birth in the world with her boy Jesus. I'd like to propose a toast to all women and men who mother God into the world through acts of kindness, compassion, peace and justice. And a toast to 2025, to more Magnificat in our world, to life, l'chaim. And that's just about it, really. As you know, if you like what I'm doing here in the shed, you can support us. You can buy us a coffee. You just have to follow the link on the screen there now. It's always as well on the title part of the YouTube films. And thanks so much for all your support to us. Thanks for lots of messages, greetings for Christmas. We appreciate it all, and just feel so blessed to be part of this community that we represent. So yeah, there it is. Have a good week. It's going to be the week in which we welcome in a new year. And so let's resolve as we go into 2025 to be kinder, to be as kind as we can to people around us, to the world, but most of all, be kind to yourselves, guys, because you are worth it. And I'm going to finish with a song by Yael Dachenbaum, which sort of summarizes the spirit of what we've been thinking about today. It's a song called War is Not a Woman's Game. See you next year.
The safety and protection of a woman and her child. When the old way keeps on failing, a new sun has to rise. Look ahead as times are changing. War is not a woman's game. They come for you, spine becoming soil, manifesting the age of redemption, the tides recoil. A nod to the horizon and its fire. The soliloquy of time lingers on our tongue, a small prayer, sacred desire. It is us.